All right, welcome everyone to actually, this is chronologically the first game in the Shusaku series because this is the very first game we have on record that Shusaku played. So this is baby Shusaku, 11 years old, 1-dan professional against a 2-dan professional. And well, this is game 4 or 5, I think, that we've done in the series, like in the real world chronology versus Shusaku chronology, because we had some issues getting started with which games we ended up passing along first. Anyway, this is all kind of fixed in together, and then from now on, after this game, all the games we're going to get are going to be normally chronological, which will be very exciting. So, yeah, there's not much for me to say about this particular game, other than to thank the contributors. So the person who put a bunch of time and effort into analyzing this game with Katago to provide information to the rest of the group was frozensoul. For Positional Judgment, we got FireScourge, DE, and myself. For Direction of Play, we got FireScourge, bugcat. Actually, maybe it doesn't matter who did what. So FireScourge, DE, me, bugcat, and that's it. So without further ado, let's get going and take a look at what we have here. So got a standard normal opening here, and Shusaku, of course, is black. And here we got one of those first possibly old-fashioned approaches to the game, where it looks a lot like ignoring the modern theory of opening with multiple corners. The strategy here is just to start with a stable corner, which is a stable group, something that you can build a fighting pattern, a fighting strategy with. So white naturally is going to kind of limit the development for that Shimari. It's like all the corners are going to be contested. And at this point, this corner is the focal point, right? Because this is the most open area. Like these two areas are equally open. So Shusaku is going to let that be for now, and he's going to reduce the potential of one of the sides, keeping this potential open, and he's going to, put this stone in between black stones. It's the opening, so a lot of these things are a little bit hand wavy. But now, technically, this stone is behind the sector line, so there's a thing to keep marginally concerned with, or for black. It's a thing to keep in mind. Now, here, just as much as we would have suggested the Shimari would go into one of the other corners, we would probably want white to go into another corner, although you would have the option of possibly playing this. This would probably not be good here because you could extend, right? Black would just get to play a move like this right away, which is this 5 space extension here, and would really cramp the development here. So you probably don't want to do that, but you might want to ignore this, let something else happen, and play over here. Now this is not what we're getting here. White instead gets a 3 space pincer. This is a lot more popular in Shusaku's time already. We saw a couple of them in Dosaku's time, but it's a more popular approach to the game. It's still old-fashioned a bit in the sense that it's trying to make the development of this corner, or stepping into this corner, less valuable, less interesting, less big. So here there's a lot of options. There's a lot of things that you can do as black. You could press, which is an option you would probably see a lot more today. But it turns out white's best answer here is going to be to resist if you press. So we can take a look at it quickly. This is not a very long variation to look at, but if you press, get a couple of stones here in my hands. If you press, white will push here. Obviously black will block. Then white cuts and black extends. And this becomes a pinwheel variation, which is something that in a lot of situations, surprisingly, when I was playing with the AI tends to enjoy seeing this show up a lot. It's a big fan of that. But as for the anecdote, this fight, like this kind of position, actually appeared in a game, and it appeared in a Jowa versus Yonezo game, which was actually reviewed by Michael Redmond, and you can find on Twitch. I think it was on the US Go, on the AGA channel, so I think it didn't make it to YouTube. And then this reappeared later on in Shuwa against Otayuza in 1844. And then, well, it came up again a couple more times. So this is not an overly rare pattern in the sense that it shows up, you know, professionals choose to play this. Or at least they did. Apparently the last one that we have on record seems to be 1889. But it is also possible that this is just because at this point 3-space pincer kind of disappeared and it stopped being interesting. Anyway, this is where we are, and the choice that black makes here is to just go into the corner. Very simple. There's no reason to be too complicated. He's going to challenge white's 3-space pincer from that perspective, saying that the idea of the 3-space pincer here is going to be undone. So here, white keeps c4 small, right, between the white stones. Although of course black has this move. This is very standard Joseki move, right? So we're not saying this is undoing black, but it's sort of suggesting that you can work together and get a result that you want. So here, of course, you're kind of growing in both directions. Of course you can pincer, right? So it's not like we're really saying this is a moyo, but it turns out because these stones are high, black can play on the third line anywhere in the middle and work towards making a base. So it's also worth noting here that with the Shimari, this stone here and this stone here, black is playing and choosing the stones towards the sides, very fundamentally towards the corner. So when black plays here, which is the next move, this is consistent with the strategy of taking points. So here, this should not be surprising so far because we see this a lot in modern games, and clearly this is not a new pattern. But one thing that's a little bit different now is black plays here. Today we might see this, we might see this, except with this tenuki, with this 3-space pincer, this is not a good idea because there's a weakness right here that's in this shape that white would be able to exploit, or what's the word? White would be aiming at exploiting by adding a stone here. And so you probably don't want to give this nice 2-space extension here for free. So this is not a good idea. And this is a little passive in the sense that it is not extending, it's extending towards this stone that there's not much you can do with, right? Like white is going to have the advantage of pressuring here, or making a base, whatever, so this direction is not interesting. However, this makes it hard for white to change direction with these stones, right? It's tricky for these stones to go towards the side and then help this stone now. So, of course, there is also a possible extension here that would be very nice. If black gets this move, black will be happy. So, yeah. So at this point, white chooses to play up here, and my camera is frozen. It doesn't seem to be frozen. Maybe it just hits. Well, I'm not looking at the screen, so maybe it like hangs back and forth. Maybe it's choppy. Let me know if that comes up again. Also, good morning. So this is one of those interesting decisions that, you know, I would probably want to play something like this probably out of habit, but having the two low Shimaris facing each other would be a little strange, I think. So the high decision also works well with these stones because it suggests that you can focus on developing strength, and that's if black plays in here, you have limited reasons to be unhappy, right? And this is technically a very far extension from this, right? You would normally expect something like this to step to, as a normal thing. The 3-space extension from the 2 stones is normal, and you see this as a Joseki. But if you do this, of course, black is gonna have options around here that may be unpleasant. So this is all you do. Now at this point, if white gets 1 more stone here, white has a lot of strength. So black can't let that happen because there's not a good other thing on the board to do that will kind of make up for white getting this. So black splits. And this is a little miai between playing at f3 and extending towards this way. And now the bottom, of course, is properly broken. So now white gets to make a nice shape towards the corner. It's not completely steady, but it's a pretty nice position to have. So now, of course, there's exactly one direction for black to go in, which is towards the stones, right? This is black asked white what direction white wanted, and white did not want to help these 3 stones directly. White wanted to just help this corner, and then he thought he was going to be okay with these 3 stones in his position. So at this point, this group is under pressure and this group is stable, because this group is almost alive already. And if you're not completely sure, consider that when you do something like this, you've got a chunk of almost ice space to work with. Okay, so now white has to jump. So white is going to run. This is a tight run because white is in fact surrounded, and here it would be easy for black to profit from this amount of space. So this is escaping with an eye at possibly turning towards the base, possibly turning over here. But this is a fighting jump. So at this point, black now has to respond, and black's choice is just to extend over here. This is not a particularly difficult jump, but it's an evaluation that these stones are actually okay, and that black wants to continue developing the board towards the rest of the game, and let this fight be more local for now. Right? Now, if we look at the board position quickly, to just evaluate this a little bit, we're going to know that this group in the corner is settled, right? It's alive, it's fine, it's happy, life is good. This group here is floating, so there's only so much we can do. Like, white is going to want to help this group. This group is pretty stable, and this group is very stable, right? Now, this group is not completely alive, but as I said, almost alive. Now, one of the reasons we strengthen this is because we don't want it to be sealed in too easily, because when it's sealed in, the strength is useless on the board, right? It's no longer strength. And black wants to use that to continue contesting the strength on the board. And so now it is going to be white's turn to play, and white is going to want to make this group stronger without making this group a ton stronger, because if this group gets a lot stronger, then this stone is going to really suffer. So white's choice is going to be to cap here. Now this does a couple of shapes. You have with these 2 stones a giraffe face, and of course you have this elephant jump here, which is not necessarily the best shape, but is a very standard way to cap when you have something like this. Because a capping move here is a move that removes the direction. It's hard for this group to go towards the center. Now black could still go towards the center, maybe this way, but this wouldn't really work because it would just make white stronger, right? So it's not really interesting. So once you're here, and you don't want this stone here, the way you are going to look at it is you have to probably get out, because now what white is asking is if white can build all of this strength again towards the center, which would make this stone's development much less useful. So black has one choice, really. and that's going to be to break out over here. That's the open weak spot. And you're splitting this group from the base. Fairly simple fighting tactic here. So now white has a bunch of options, right? Like all around here this way to fight with. And the difference is going to be really whether you, in the end, whether you want to go here or here. So whether you really want to kind of drive black towards the right side or drive black towards the center. And white doesn't want to drive black towards the center because he wants to preserve the strength for this group. So white is going to choose this stone. And this reinforces the elephant eye, right? So black is going to continue because black is going to build a bit of strength, and because of the position, we have a forcing move here. Because we can ask, can I take this stone? And if black gets to take this stone, then the corner is going to be weakened, right? If we just add a stone here for a second. This stone peeks into the corner, so it's not great for black to have to deal with that, for white to have to deal with that. And if this group is stable and has strength, this is a very thin shape to play with, right? This is a large knight's move. A very large knight's move. Fat knight? I don't know. We need more leeway to create shape names. So this is going to be forcing, right? And white responds. No reason to do anything dumb about that. Back. And now that black has this additional strength, black can come back here. And this now is in the middle of this sort of shape, and it is putting pressure on these two stones that are knight's moves, so it's a weak cuttable shape. And of course, obviously, more pressure on these stones, which are separated. Now, you know, as the Shusaku study project grows, the comments get kind of wider and longer, and this is very cool. But I'm trying to draw a balance between kind of reading the SGF and providing something that is mine. But this is actually, there's a bunch of options here to play with. So at this point, white is going to poke over here. He's going to help his group by asking if he can make a bunch of strength here. Right? Like this stone is now in some amount of danger. So you have the options here to resist you have the option to yield and connect, or resist and push up. You could also try to tenuki and get out, which would be an attack, preparing an attack on these stones, because of course if you go out, this group can push through, follow through on the move, and okay. Or you could try to get out here, but of course this gives white the option to make better shape, push through, and so forth. So the tenuki is not a reasonable option right now. So black resists. Now there's a little bit of pressure that grows on c11, not a lot, but just enough, just a bit. And you're keeping white separated. Again, basic fighting or strategy possibly. So white has to continue fighting this way because he's still trying to work with this group, right? He's really building strength with this group. Now, black gets to resist further and cannot let this group get sealed in and cannot let this group connect to c11 too easily. Now this is interesting because white is giving black this strength. White knows this is happening, but he wants to build this strength because he's trying to come back on this group. So there's the balancing act that they're playing is about figuring out where the strength is going to be on the board to leverage it. And now white thinks he has enough to come back and cap. Now here, black can live locally. This is important because it gives you a sense of the stakes in this fight. So if let me show you this variation, because I had a hard time seeing it, so others might too. So if you start here and you make this table shape, white will probably keep you sealed in, because otherwise you pierce through the shape, and then it doesn't matter if you live, because you're out, and black is weak, and white is weaker. Then you're going to ask if you can connect underneath, which makes sense, right? If you can connect underneath, you don't have to live, you're fine. So white blocks. And then you're here, and the rest of the variations will be an exercise for the reader, but hopefully this is enough to give you a sense of where the eye space is going to be. And that gives you 2 eyes. So when we cap, it's important to note at this point we are locally alive. But that's of course kind of the passive way of doing this, is just living, right? So black is not going to be passive. Shusaku is going to resist further, and he's going to play one more move in this direction, asking how far he can go, if he can pressure the corner, and if he can keep this group really separated. And white plays a solid defensive move here, mostly securing a corner. I believe black actually has some stones, some options here for attaching here, doing some shenanigans here, poking at the cut and so forth, but things for later in the game, not for right now. This comment doesn't make sense. This literally is the opposite of what I just said. There, fix that. I have to re-upload that. Okay. So now that we have this, black is ready to poke at the weaknesses in white's shape, because this is a knight's move, this is a knight's move, so there's weaknesses here, double knight's moves, and then this bend here has some weaknesses as well to play with. So, oh, and of course there's a weakness here, which is the one that actually black chooses to start with. Right, black is going to go out this way. And this is a large-scale surround, and it is also beginning to poke a little bit at this Shimari, saying, what are the odds I can make strength on the other side of the board while I'm chasing your stones that don't exactly have eye space yet? Can I get stronger? So white is going to resist this slightly by trying to squeeze black towards the right side and building more strength. And black begins to poke at white's shape. Now here we have a question. We could not really figure out what happened, but white plays here. This is one of those, who knows exactly why this happened. The best move for white would be here, and it's like a 2.5, 3-point difference. But this gives you more options to connect with the forcing moves. But white, there's something white wanted to avoid, which we cannot really figure out really what it was that white wanted to avoid with this choice. But as a result, black is able to play this move now, and now white has to sacrifice, he's gonna have to sacrifice his stone. He doesn't need to, but he is choosing to. So with this move, he starts a sacrifice sequence. Black responds by poking here, and white responds here. Now, give me 1 second. Oh yeah, simple. So white responds here, and the reason why is because you need to maintain the connection with these stones. If you decide you want to try and be clever, and you want to poke, and you want to push here, then black will play where you would play instead. And now you have to choose what's going to happen, because some amount of these stones are going to be surrounded. So you want to try and get out because the fight continues towards the center. That's the difficult choice you have to make. And then once you're here and you're able to maintain this strength here, black can cut through, and then these stones are dead. And it's a very difficult, it's a painful trade to give up these stones to get this sort of slightly better shape towards the center. So the recommendation is don't do that. So white doesn't. And then black connects, all the stones are captured. And then white plays one move here to try and maintain his strength. And that's a move that black needs to respond to and connects out and, you know, guaranteed makes life for sure. Easy life for everyone to see. So now the group is easily stabilized in center. And it's not completely sealed off, right? Because this is an open path here. So these three stones here, while they're facing this stone that's lonely and they're on the side, they're a little bit weak. And these stones aren't alive yet either. Now, at this point, white figures this is probably good enough. And white goes here. Right, just going, okay, we're going to continue. I'm going to now come from the other side to build strength and to expand this area and then counter this stone and help this group out. That's the idea. But it turns out white should have played just one more stone here. Just close that off. It is Gote, but it is a much stronger, thicker move. It's not a huge mistake, but it is. It does turn out to be 2 points or so not the end of the world. So as a result, because white didn't do that, black jumps on the occasion and gets out. So now again, the pressure grows here. This group is still in some danger of being sealed in, although obviously this stone doesn't belong here. Sorry about that. That's been gone for a while. This stone was here, this stone wasn't. My apologies. Difficulties of doing those reviews on a real board. Someday I'll be good at it, I promise. I've been promising this for 2 years, so you know, I'm not good at it now. Will I ever be good at it? Stay tuned. The answer in Series 12 of Trevoke reviews real board games. So in response to this, white has to keep pressure up and has to focus on getting out. Right? So now black gets to turn. He just says, all right, thank you. I would be very happy to possibly take all of these points. Can't think of a reason to say no to that. And so now, you know, because white has to worry about this shape. This is not a good enough shape to continue with. So white has to make something solid. Right? Now this is tricky, because so now this group is weak. This group is okay. It's all right. And this group, as we said, is pretty strained. It's pretty weak. So what you would like to do here is you want to lean on strength to attack weakness. And so this is the strongest group that white has. And capturing it would be fantastic, but it's getting very difficult. So black is going to suggest that he might be able to poke at the shape to get a lot stronger and continue attacking this stone. But this is also not completely sente, because in the worst case scenario, white can just run. So white ignores this and strategically tries to kind of bypass the attack that black is suggesting. So black begins by turning, saying, well, if I can continue to attack this group, I think I should. And now, of course, white is behind the sector line. Now, white was prepared for this and responds with this move, which again is slow and patient and just moves the fight further up, continuing to move the shape and very patiently trying to leverage this very open board at the moment. And then black jumps here. Now here, you could ask, why jump? Why not do one space up? But of course, just do one space. white can strengthen this stone here but by creating better shape. And it's actually interesting to note that from a white stone perspective, from a white decision, white cutting through here or just extending here actually lead to pretty equivalent results, right? If you push at c14, the result you're gonna get will mostly take the corner away. I can actually show this. It's a 10 stones or so. But I am at move 54, and there's a bunch more moves. But this is... yeah, I'm gonna be able to move a little faster in a second, but there's a... I think this is one of those interesting positions that's worth exploring a little bit. So... if you push here, black blocks, and then white turns, and black pokes here, and when white Ataris, black says, okay, thank you for the stone, you can take that, I'm okay with it. Then white would Atari this other stone, because that gives you slightly better shape. And then we'll leave this here, there's some further options, but basically you get a group that has lived and mostly taken away the corner, and white has some strength here. So it's equivalent because it's like within 1 point of each other. So this is the other option. White just gently pokes here. So black continues the pressure of trying to keep white a little separated. So white asks if he can continue to get connected, and you'll notice this gently is building strength, is thickness towards this side of the board, right? Slightly undone by these two stones, but still nothing to spit at here, nothing to laugh at when it comes to pressure on the top. So now black is going to ask if he can connect underneath, this way. So now white has a bunch of options to play with, right? If you look at the board, you can try to resolve the left side. You can poke here once to see if we can cut. You can close this off this area. You can approach the top in some fashion around here. You can approach the top right. Or you could just cut at L7. Just cut right here. Those are kind of the options you have. And the cut is just, cut, block here, puts the stone by itself, which reinforces the strength here. Also means probably black wouldn't go for this variation. It would probably just kind of push here, probably would peep, you connect, it would peek through, and then you're connected, but it's a weaker connection. So this being said, that's not what white does. White is going to try and break the right side. So now black plays a fairly gote move. So it's strong, it's solid, and it is taking cash, right? Now this is, it's fun because technically, if you're gonna really look at the AI and be very precise and really kind of care about it, this is a mistake-ish. Like it's not, because it's not perfect. It's not a 2-point mistake or a 3-point mistake. It's like 1.5 points. And this is also the point where the game goes from black being 1.5 point up or 1.2 points up to white being half a point up. But if you look at the board position, this is a position where black has real points, right? That cannot be taken away. Like this is points that can't be taken away. This is a couple of points. This is points. It's not a lot of points because you can poke through here, but these are kind of real points. And white doesn't really have real points. There's something here, but this game is even if and only if white can do a perfect conversion of their thickness into territory. Right? So it turns out it would be worth more points to go out instead. Like doing something like this would be kind of more point, so to speak, but it would be kind of a letting whites have an easier time with their thickness. So this is kind of black's strategy and hedging their bets. Then white follows through on this move, and I've grown to be a big fan of these attachments on the Shimaris. Because I saw them a lot in Dosaku games, so that's why I'm biased. This is fairly standard sequence, and now at this point, white is going to leave this B for now for a second, and is going to poke at this. And this is a fairly simple sequence to look at. I don't know if I want to add tons of words to it. There. The end result being white maintains their corner, black has shape. And this is the beginning of white saying, I should make points now. I should like really begin to close out my points. So now white has this corner, right? So like this is completely settled. This is settled. This is settled. This is stable, but it's undercut. And the thickness is over here for white, right? And at this point, if you count, black has 44 points, white has about 44 points. The game's about even. Now we have further evidence that some moves are universal, and black is going to shoulder hit on this stone. And this is one of those things you want to consider, is a stone on the third line is really one of those things where it's an opportunity for your opponent to ask you to choose, do you want to go out into the center and split the center in two, or do you want to give me the center and do you want to take the side? Put in practice by, do you want to resist and go up this way, or do you want to yield and go this way? Whereas, of course, it's the exact opposite thing if you have a fourth line stone. If you play here and you get, you give the opponent the opportunity to play on the third line and then ask what the fourth line stone is for. Now, this next sequence is one where they both sort of chose something, I think, because white should just go here. But white chooses to play here. And of course, the theory goes that if you play a forcing move and they don't respond to the forcing move, you should follow through. In this particular case, though, because white played here, black should play here, but black doesn't, because black followed through. So it turns out 2-point mistake, 2-point mistake, everybody's happy, right? And now we continue. Technically, white should play here, but white plays on this side. And you can understand, when I say should, these are 2-point things. Like they're not game-ending mistakes, you know? Especially because the game is dead even right now. Although I think black is 2 points up at this particular point in time. So if you look at this makes some sense, right? And you have this split where white is trying to hedge their bets, and black seems to be in white territory. But black gets to attach here, which I thought was a pretty cool move. So white very gently says, look, I'm strong here. This is my area of strength. I'm not going to start a fight with you because I don't want to make it easy for you to get stronger. So black continues to try to play forcing moves to get stronger. And then white descends because that provides some stability on both sides. Finally, black extends here. Black honey, oops. White takes the Atari, which black, of course, feels compelled to respond to. And then white Atari this stone. and we have a trade here that leads into the potential for a ko. Now this is not yet a ko. It's almost a ko. It's going to be a ko when white plays here to challenge the connection. Right? Until then, it's not a ko. And because it's, there's nothing. You're not basically the winner. It's a ko when the winner of the exchange actively has a sort of gets a meaningful change on the board. Now what we're looking at, because this is going to become a ko, so this is what you to look at when you're considering this position on the board. If white wins, let's do this for a second. Let's say you get this and you get that, to make it very simple and obvious. If white wins, these stones are floating, right? Like this is the key. You have 5 stones here that have to go out and connect, and this is all connected out. So this is now a ton of thickness here and here that is only challenged by these stones. So this is the big potential here. However, if black wins, and to make black win, we're gonna say, I guess we'll put 3 stones here, or funsies. Right? If black wins, I think it's fair to say that this is sad, and this is sad. Right? These stones are really floating, and they're gonna have to run over here to do something. And that's a good thing for black, because it means white has a harder time converting their thickness into territory if they have to use it to live, So all right, this is the board position that we have. Man, you take a 3-week break and then there's no one in chat. Very sad. Okay. Yeah, so this is the information for this particular board position, right? So white is going to continue to kind of build more strength, prepare for further co-threats and splits, and basically make it okay to lose these stones. So black is going to take this. He's going to say, if I play another stone, I can start to really do some damage here. And in the worst case scenario, I can take a couple of points here. But as long as I'm connected, it's very hard to make points here, right? So now white doesn't have a reason to fight this ko right now. There's no reason to go look for a ko threat, because there's no points to make. And in the worst case scenario, you can kind of squeeze black if black wants to make these cuts. Right? I cut here. Okay, fine, Alatari. Let me build this thicker wall. So white plays out here. And this is now an extension. You'll notice, right? This is actually a very big extension, right? So poking from here to here is a direction adjustment, which is, I think, fairly shrewd and a pretty good move. And this is also the start of a base for these stones, should white lose the ko. So this is working in a couple of directions. So black splits the top. And one thing to consider is that this will also create more smaller positions on the board, right? Something here, something here, something here, whatever. The more positions that are smaller and worth about the same amount of points, the closer you get to a ko that's worth fighting, because there's moves on the board that are worth about as much as the ko, right? And the more of those you have, the more of a ko there's to fight. So white takes the extension naturally from the top, continues. This feels a lot because that's what happened on this side. This is the exact same shape that white had, that black had here, that white used here. And this symmetry, I think, always makes me a little happy, but it's where we are. So black very gently gets out. and now this is technically a mistake. There's a couple of differences that white, a couple of options that white could start with, but there's the variation that starts with this move for white, which would be better. Really closes off this area, and then kind of squeezes off this board to make the to convert the bottom into points and reduce. This is really kind of the variation you get. So you start to really make points, and you seal the bottom up. And the other variation that white was looking at, and this is a variation that the AI would prefer to what happened in the game. And I'm going to show this one because this was a couple of things that I thought were interesting. Black would take a forcing move here. Well, sorry, this is not a forcing move. This is making a bamboo joint to maintain a connection out into the center. And the purpose for that is to keep this group split from this group and to make it harder, to make a steadier connection here and make it harder to connect out here. White would challenge this. And then black can connect out here. White resists. Black gets to press once. And then you kind of get back into this forcing move here because it still works to give this stone, this group, some strength. And once you connect here, white gets to take the ko once. Actually, I think it's more than once. But black gets to jump out here. I started early. I started at 10 a.m. We continue here, and we have a couple of more moves here. Well, now it's a ko in earnest, right? And then once you threaten, you go here. Now, you get this type of trade here, where you get more potential for the territory. Now the center is shredded, and it's really going to be about closing off these areas into territory. Forgot how to work time zones. That happens. I was actually thinking that it was weird to not have Solara in chat, and then it turns out Solara is like, I think 2 hours earlier than usual. So it's possible he's going to show up in like an hour and a half and go, the stream's over? What happened? So this is one kind of variation for that the AI would suggest, which is, I think, mostly intelligible. These two stones, remove this stone, remove these two stones, remove these two stones, remove that stone. I think this covers all of the moves that were added. That's going, nope, not this one. Okay, so I need to reschedule Sunday sessions for after people wake up. I reschedule Sunday sessions from like 12 noon. Yes, these are recorded. These go on YouTube. I rescheduled my Sunday sessions from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. ET to 10 a.m. because I wanted to have an afternoon. Forgive me for that. And because I wanted to be able to eat lunch. Forgive me for that too. So anyway, now the move that white chooses here is the peep. And this is a 3.5 point mistake. But you'll see how it kind of evolves the board a bit differently from what we saw. Black says, okay, let me get stronger. And then, oh, come on. Excuse me for a second, that's not right. Try this again. This is the board position. This, at least I caught it this time. So, white peeps. Black connects. White takes the ko. Yep, this is allowed. Thank you, appreciate it. So black gets to turn here. And you'll notice we have the same kind of direction as in the variation, where black wants to kind of go in this direction, go over here to maintain the line of sight and wreck the center, since that's the main area where white can make points. So white is going to continue trying to grow this into a group. And now this move is actually also a mistake. It's a 3-point mistake by white. The best move here would just be to extend at 016. It would just be to like come down here. Sorry, here. I apologize. Because you just make better shape. You give black the responsibility of figuring out what's happening. Right? Now, at this point of the game, all the questions are on the board. This is the board position that has to be resolved to get to end game. So all the variations that are involved on this board to play have to solve for the ko on the right. Right? They have to handle white's potential on the center left. They have to close the bottom right corner. And then they have to figure out what's going to happen in this area of the board. That's like every variation has to like answer these questions. Now the recommended AI moves here are still going to be D6 and L7, which basically the same variations as before. But anyway, white doesn't go up, white goes here. So black works to separate. It looks like one of the reasons white made this quote-unquote mistake was to allow for a potential ko. And then when white asks if he can connect, black says this is not a ko. I appreciate the suggestion and the offer, but I'm not interested. And white plays here to connect. Now this is another like 3.5 point mistake, and at this point black is up 12 points. So this was kind of a series of moves here that white just did not handle this well enough. He probably had this path in mind, probably to keep black split, but it wasn't the right strategy, right? He needed to kind of keep this group light towards the center and then eventually come back around to these stones, but focus on the ko. Now, ironically, here, white would prefer the ko shape, because this is also better eye space prospects. But this is what black does. This is what white does. And we're gonna go right back around. Black is going to play here, but this is a 4-point mistake. So black is up 7 points. Now maybe black was trying to simplify the game, but I doubt it, because at this point, this was the time for black to play here. It is properly forcing, and it would have given a slight advantage towards the center. But once we're here, we finally make this into a real ko. That's not the right buckets. So white asks what we can do here. Black says, well, I'm not letting you take this stone, which, to be fair, I wouldn't either. And so we continue the ko. And black says, you know what? This is not exactly a ko threat, but if you could choose to play here now to finish, I get to jump out with these stones and then I'll be fine. So white chooses to not let black have the option to jump out into the center, which is reasonable. Right? White is trying to make this into a coordinated attack to make some points somewhere. So black gets to capture the ko. White gets to get out because this cut would hurt. So black gets to say, hey, look, I'm now connected. Really a shame for all your plans, isn't it? But we continue here, because there's still things to be fought here on, as far as his board position. Black asks if he can connect out this way. White is going to indicate he's not a big fan of the idea. And we get to take the ko. And now we begin to squeeze in this area, because we can aim to remove some ice space here. Now black's response here is not the one you might expect, depending on how strong you are at the game. But we're gonna cut here, which I enjoyed. And that's also partly because if you can extend once here, you can Atari, and then that can really change what's going to happen in this area of the board, and that's going to be tricky. So it's interesting how this ko threat here is one that directionally can be managed on the board by turning around to another area of the board. So white is forced to defend in this descent. And now that this has been done, black creates this bamboo joint. Now this is slow and solid. It's not exactly a ko threat, but it is threatening the eye shape of the white group. Right? Still threatening this shape here. And it's still reducing the center potential ever so slightly. So white continues with the ko threat. Sorry, with the ko itself. So black peeps through, which is in fact a valid ko threat. That is something white cannot actually allow to continue. So that's another ko threat. And then when white says, oh wait, can I threaten to disconnect these 5 stones? Black says, well, I would rather know if it's okay for me to really damage these, because if I can cut here, find the ice space, right? Find the ice. So here, this is another one of those things where it's a weird kind of way to count endgame. White responds here, connecting against the threats, which seems natural and probably is, what I would do. The AI wants to play here and kind of begin the sequence that way. And it does help a little bit with ice space, so I can understand. But this is where we are. And to be fair, this is black is up 9 points now. So if you added komi, black would be up 3 points. So the game is pretty even by modern standards, and black is up by a bit more than komi. That doesn't make sense. If there were komi, the game would be almost even, but there's no komi, so black is ahead by, the first move plus a couple of points. And it's worth noting the game was like dead even, so white had made up the lack of komi up until this exchange, which kind of made everything kind of shift a lot. Now white comes back and closes this area. Oops. Like this. And open this area. And now we have to descend. Take this here. This is a trade. It's an interesting exchange to make on the board, but worth it for, well, even as far as I can tell for white and black. And now at this point, black just closes the co. Just says, you know what, I'm happy with this board position being as is. This is not going to be a lot to be points. This is all I wanted. This is not going to die. That's all I wanted. This is solid. I'm okay. This might be disconnected, but I have two groups to take it towards, so I'm all right with this. Now, this is actually technically a 3-point mistake, closing this co. This is one of those interesting things to look at with Katago, and this is not actually in the SGF that the Shusaku Study Project will provide, and probably should be, but as homework for as homework for the interested, if you look at the board position before this move, and you look at the recommended path for black to play, the recommended path for black to play involves playing out this co for quite a while. Like, there's a bunch of threats that come up over here and over here and here and here. It's like there's a lot of things, and there's a lot of squeezing over here. It is all about playing through this co, and it's very reasonable to suggest that even 11-year-old Shusaku had counted, knew he was 6 points up, and had a sense. I'm not gonna say he knew exactly that he was gonna be, after all Yosei, up, but he's up 6 points. If he gives up 3 points here, he's still ahead. And so this, I think, might be one of those early instances of him playing a move that is a mistake that allows him to play through a simpler game. And this is a pattern that shows up, this is like the Shusaku pattern, is playing moves that keep the game simple. Now, of course, I am not a Shusaku expert. I'm sure other people might have way, way better suggestions. But anyway, so white now tries to keep this group from being connected, and maybe again trying to make points somewhere, trying to figure out a way to bring this group connected to life somewhere. So black says, all right, fantastic. My group is connected. I am happy. So here, basically in the let's begin endgame category, we close that off. And then Shusaku says, are we doing endgame? I think I'm threatening the life of your group here. So connects, black Atari, white connects, black extends, and at this point, of course, if these stones connect out, you're good, and you can Atari here to connect out, or you can get out and connect, so pretty good life for white, for black, I mean. And here, because white is going to extend out, black can just follow. Because this hinges around this stone, so now black has all these options to connect. And now, when white extends one more time, black is going to continue the squeeze, saying, hey look, if you want to live with this group, you're going to have to make two eyes somewhere, because I'm not going to let you connect out here that easily. So when white extends, black makes a bamboo joint. And white continues because this is converting a bunch of points, right? This is a very large corner. It is a very respectable corner. But the center has been properly shredded. So white finishes his connection out here. And black gets to turn. white is going to extend a little bit because, of course, these stones are captured, right? So this is a reduction. Now here, technically, black makes another mistake. This is a 3.5 point mistake, which brings the game down to black being up by 1 point. The AI here would prefer here. The AI would really want to just play this endgame over here. It also is okay with playing over here, and it's also okay with Q7, which is this. It likes these moves a little better. But black just extends here, which, you know, creates a kind of cutting point sequence, but doesn't give black much. Now, the AI wants here in response. The AI thinks you should push here, but white protects, which makes sense. Now black is up 3 points, so this is it's a very close game, right? So other than, even with this kind of complex fight here that took the center of the board and this position they had to solve, overall it was a fairly peaceful game. And now, finally white pushes here. Black asks if he can make maybe a few more points. White aims to keep the stones split and maybe to make a few more points. Black is going to ask if he can maybe take this stone or reconnect it, or definitely keep white from effectively splitting here. White gets to ask if he can save the stone. Black says no. White asks if he can, you know, poke through or at least reduce things a little bit, which actually would be a cut. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I would cut things. Not that it would be the end of the world because you can connect back out to here, but you can cut. Okay. It's also going to make possibly 1 more point for white. So black descends here for 1 more point. White closes here. And this is really the end of the game here. We're just closing off all of these tiny little positions. That stone doesn't get to move. Finally, black comes back and plays this move. So white connects. Black asks if he can cut through the stones, which would be a bit of a problem, right? Because these stones don't really have 2 eyes, so you don't really want to let black do that. So white stays connected, and in so doing, he asks what he can do over here. Now this actually is another 3-point mistake, and technically, like, this is actually interesting. We're almost done with the game, but this is technically a 3-point mistake, and the score is like white +5 now. Black should play the end game here around M1, which I can show if you're interested. But I'm gonna come back to it in a second. But there's 2 more games. There's 2 more moves in the SGF record after this. White plays this move, and black plays this, interestingly enough. Now this is where the game ends. I'm gonna show the end game sequence around M1 now, but just so you know, the game record marks that this game is won by black, so won by Shusaku by 2 points. So in the end game, whatever it was, black and white handled it such that white ended up losing 6 points or 7 points. But if we go back here and take a look at the end game down here, this would be marginally better end game. Like 3 points better. If you go here and then you squeeze out here, which then you ignore that temporarily to come out here. And these all must be moves that they played eventually when they finished the game, right? But not today. So this would be the kind of optimal endgame sequence here, as per AI. Or possibly as per Frozen. I don't actually know if he used Katago for this or not. I have no idea. I imagine he doesn't need it. Finally close this off. Black just takes. And then white plays here. And this ends up being the end, and, you know, white is up a point or two, I think. All right, so this was it. All right, so thank you everyone for joining and watching this this video of the Shusaku study project. If you enjoy these videos, obviously like and subscribe just to keep track of new them. It makes us feel good to see that more likes and subscriptions. It makes us feel good to see them shared and talked about. If you want to join and contribute, the link to the website that has the Discord server is going to be in the comments, in the description, I mean. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next game.